Well, good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, November the 12th, 2024. And this is our election edition of Two Peas in a Podcast. And to my right is P1 Paul Mosley.
Yes, indeed. And we are 1 week away from this election that everybody's been talking about. And, you know, I, Phil called me earlier today, and I was uh, I was kind of reluctant to actually do the show this evening because I'm still kind of shell shocked from what happened. And so hopefully tonight we can talk about where my thoughts are as it relates to Trump being reelected for a second term and what that means as it relates to faith, Christianity, and other things. And hopefully, Larry, I don't know if you can put the phone number up for us for folks to call in. I forgot to ask you to do that, but we do want you guys that are watching right now to participate if possible. Give us a call. Give us your thoughts on the election. Let us know whether you're happy about Trump being reelected. Let us know whether you are upset about Trump being reelected. And if so, why? I also want to segue into the power of prayer. Does prayer really work? Because I'm sure there were a lot of people praying on both ends of the spectrum, Republican and Democrat. So, having said that, I'll turn it back over to Phil.
All right, thanks, Paul. Well, I'd like to start off with, first of all, saying that I think a lot of people, as you mentioned, Paul, were like yourself in a state of shock that Kamala Harris was soundly defeated. And what does that portend for America? And I think one of the reasons why on the promotion for the show, I said God and politics. In my humble opinion, the through line through all of this is the Christian mythology, the Christian theology, and the doctrines that people have embraced. And I said Donald J. Trump, J is for Jesus. The fact that they've anointed. Now, excuse me, they've described him as being anointed. And how do you reconcile that with the facts that he is a convicted felon? He is someone that was sued successfully for sexual predatory behavior, rape, and other despicable deeds. But yet, people really elevated Donald Trump and began to has since his 2000 what was that 12 through 2012 when he first came down the escalator. That somehow that they've transferred this belief in Jesus into Donald Trump, and for me that's troubling because it's a situation where just like saying that God spoke to me, you do that, it's indefensible. I mean, it's you can't assail that. You can't you because it's something that you could say, well, I think he's anointed by God, and therefore there's nothing you can do to say it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people,
Yeah.
like 73 million Americans, had that similar thought about Donald Jesus Trump, and I have a problem with that.
Yeah, and I've said to folks since the election that it almost makes sense to me that people have put him up at that pedestal of like a god because similar to God, God gets excuses like Donald Trump. He gets credit for the good things, and he gets an excuse for all the bad things that he's responsible for. So it's been quite a week for me. I'll say that. And but I do want to get into and as you can see, we do have the phone number up for those of you that are watching. Would love to hear from you. Phone number
Call in,
216
call in.
584 5400. Now, when Joe Biden decided to drop out, I can remember hearing about it and being like just excited. So obviously, I didn't want Donald Trump to win this election, but I was so excited that Joe Biden had gotten out, because it was clear that he should not have been running for a second term. He did not seem to be cognitively there anymore. So I was excited that there was going to be another candidate, and I was hopeful that there was going to be some form of a primary, because, to be honest, I was hoping that the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, would have been selected as a candidate, and unfortunately, it's because he's a very articulate, young, attractive white man, and I felt like that is what was needed to defeat Donald Trump. I was reluctant and a little bit concerned about the fact that we were considering a woman, not just a woman, but a black woman for candidate for our Democratic Party, and I just didn't think that we were ready. But I bought into the hype once I started seeing some of the poll numbers suggesting that she had a really good chance to win. But we talked about people putting Donald Trump up with God and Jesus, but we have to inject race into this.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I as a result of this election, I feel like I woke up from a coma almost. I feel like I've been in a deep sleep, and I feel like for the first time I have to come to terms with the fact that I am living in a country that is still filled with a lot of racism. And I think that was a driving force behind folks, regardless of whether they want to say it was the economy and whether their gas prices were high, whether their food prices were high, whether it was the economy, whether it was the border or the immigrants. We reelected a criminal felon.
Yes.
34 criminal convictions, and like you said, saying that we could grab women and all these horrible things, and yet that was overlooked and bypassed. And I'm wondering whether the hate overcame the love of some of these Christians, and that they're hiding behind the economy and the gas prices to justify their decision.
Well, I'm gonna also inject sexism, because Kamala Harris had the double whammy of being not only a black candidate, but she was also a woman. So it was a double whammy. And again, I'm gonna continue to circle back to Christian theology and the way that it has been played out in American history. You think about the fact that women have not been allowed to assume high levels of leadership in a lot of denominations. A lot. Catholicism. Is there ever a chance that a woman will be pope? Right. No. You could look at the Baptists. You could look at all the other religions or denominations where they have struggled to allow women to get to the pulpit, let alone lead. I mean, just to get up there and speak the word. So that thought that women cannot be trusted to lead a congregation, they're not trusted to lead a spiritual organization, that's transferred to the thought about women not being capable of running the country. And what is sad, this is to me the saddest thing about what happened on last Tuesday, is that America continues this drought of women leading the country, whereas we have countries to the south of us, Mexico. Now let's talk about Mexico for just 1 second. Mexico is a predominantly Catholic country, predominantly Catholic. They elected a woman who's also of the Jewish faith to be their next leader. God damn, can't we do something in America even close to that? No. Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris. And the fact that Americans believe that you would trust an old white man who is clearly not cognitive,
Not on top of his game.
not on top of his game, to give him the keys to the car and say, "Go ahead, take us for another drive, another spin around the block."
In addition to everything else, I mean, in addition to the criminal convictions, in addition to the fact that he incited an insurrection that almost led to the overthrowing of the transfer, the peaceful transfer of power back in 2020 in 2020.
January 6, 2020.
Yeah. And
20 was January 6, 2021.
21, exactly.
Yeah.
The fact that all of these things happen, and that most recently he said that immigrants were poisoning the blood of our country, which in and of itself is not a dog whistle, it's a bullhorn. He's saying it straight out, we don't want these people of color coming over here. And what he was able to do was inject fear and hate, and he gave people the license to do so publicly and or privately, because a lot of folks were saying that they could not support him or they didn't like either candidate.
Yeah.
And they went into those voting booths and they cast their ballot for Donald Trump, and it was a wake-up call for me. But again, speaking of calling, 216-584-5400. This is the post-election edition of Two Peas in a Pod. We really, really, really want to hear from those of you that are angry about the election results, those of you that are overjoyed about the election results, and we want to know why.
So now, Paul, let's talk about, not only did Donald Trump talk about immigrants poisoning the well, Elon Musk, who people didn't understand why he bought Twitter and took a $29 billion bath for Twitter, but he didn't care about the money. He's the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
He bought Twitter so that he could control the narrative.
It was an investment.
No, it wasn't an investment. No, because he lost money on the investment.
Well, no, he lost money initially, but think about the money he's going to gain as a result of Trump's reelection.
But see, to me, it's not even about the money. It's the fact that he was able to control the narrative, put out disinformation, do a lot of things. But what's interesting is that here we have Trump saying that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation, but Elon Musk is an immigrant.
Yeah.
Elon Musk was here illegally.
Two of Trump's wives were immigrants.
Yeah, they came in over on these what kind of visas did they come on? But they were specious at best. But they came over. But the fact that no one stops to say, okay, wait a minute. When 73 million, was it 73 million votes?
I turned it off at about 10 o'clock when I realized
it's a gigantic number. It's a gigantic number. But the fact that they're willing to overlook all of that and say, well, I'm still going to hold my nose. Now, I don't even think people held their nose. I think they gleefully.
Oh, they knew.
They knew what they wanted, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Because to them, to me, people who voted for Trump, they put race over country. They put sex over country. They put the immigration issue over country because it's exaggerated.
Right. And you have to say they had to put it over their faith too, because if you are a true Christian, and some will say, well, Trump is pro-life, but he really isn't. He's pro-Trump, and he did what he needed to do to get the power. And had it been him saying that he was pro-choice, which he was starting to lean in the direction of during his campaign, because he saw that some of the abortion laws were falling against the Republican Party. So he was starting to say, well, he's going to be the best thing ever for women and their reproductive rights, which flies right in the face of the Republican Party. But I spoke to a classmate this evening, and she had an interesting perspective. She actually said that, as much as she didn't want Donald Trump to win, she didn't feel that a woman should be the president, and she felt from a biblical perspective that a man should be the head of the House and the head of the country, even though we've had some amazing women leaders like Margaret Thatcher, but that's sort of the mindset that some folks had. And unfortunately, those two very powerful mindsets, racism and sexism, played a role in putting a criminal back into the White House.
But Paul, what you just touched on is her belief in the Bible, saying that from a biblical perspective. But what I was thinking about earlier today is that we talk about the Bible was written by man,
Of course,
but it wasn't written by men. It was written by men,
right?
And that's the thing that people don't understand. It was written by men, so of course they're gonna take control of the narrative and put women and put them in a position which is beneath men, and suggest that the man is always this, and man is always that, and women is less than this and less than that. So I'm trying to think in 2024, how do you swallow that as a woman of faith and say, well, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the man always being the head of everything, and never giving women a chance to express themselves as leaders of particular areas. Fortunately, I think that people will continue to evolve, and it's not going to happen in my lifetime, but maybe in my daughter's lifetime, maybe in your son's lifetime, in the next 30, 40 years, we might finally crack that glass ceiling. But it's not going to happen anytime soon, as long as the Christian theology still supports a patriarchy that says that men are first, women are second, and children are third. And I have this is part and parcel. One of the reasons why I had to walk away from religion is because it definitely perpetuates that sexism or the sexist thought that somehow men are naturally superior to women, and that's no different than perpetuating that white people are naturally superior to black people or people of color. I mean, it goes on and on. So for me, I said it, sort of in jest, but I really do think that the J in Donald Trump is in people's mind is the J is for Jesus, and I can't fathom that people were able to honestly reconcile themselves, reconcile their thoughts with the facts that you've laid out about his past, which you all know. And another thing, it's amazing. I've had the experience of being conned like at a major level. When I had Fill the Fire, I was conned by this guy out of Atlanta, and he wound up conning lots of people. His name was Kirk Wright, and he conned people out of Atlanta out of hundreds of millions of dollars. He conned me out of Fill the Fire and all kinds of stuff. But I had to take away a lesson from that. And that is, a con man is only as good as you are greedy. Your greed is what feeds the con. People think it's the con man that's feeding. No, it's your greed that feeds your con. And what's amazing to me is that Donald Trump is basically feeding off of the greed that, and I'm going to interject race, that a lot of white people have, that this is their country, and that anything else other than that, anything other than that is not important. And so Donald Trump has basically conned 73 million people into thinking that somehow that he can deliver them the good old days when white folks were in control and they can do all this and that. But it's a con, and it's because the greed, or it's not only the greed, but the unwillingness to let go and to accept the fact that this country is changing.
Right. Let's just keep it real. Make America Great Again was a dog whistle. Basically, it meant let's take America back to a time where black people were in a place where we didn't have immigrants. I won't say immigrants. We don't have people that are black and brown in this country. Because when you ask a person that's wearing a MAGA hat, when was America great for black people? There's a lot of black folks wearing MAGA hats, and they don't have a good answer, because there is no good answer for when America was great again for black folks.
Right.
So, but I do say be careful what you asked for, because now that it appears that they're going to have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch.
Right. Yeah.
There's no excuses for things that should be able to get done. Y'all, I guess he just nominated this guy to be the border czar that's actually talking about deporting American citizens.
Oh, he's saying if you are here and your citizenship is suspect, you got to go.
Well, he actually said, they asked him, is there any way for you to keep families together that some of the family members are here illegally and other family members are not here illegal? How can you keep these families together? And his response, well, then they can leave too. So in other words, the way to keep them together is everybody goes. And this is the border czar. I think his last name is Homan or something of that nature.
Yeah. But it's interesting. You say be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And what's interesting about that whole thing is that what people don't understand is that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the fact that you're going to deport all these, what you say, illegal immigrants, the shock to the economic system is twofold. One is that you have fewer consumers, and then you have fewer workers. I don't care how strong you think the American economy, it cannot absorb that shock. That's a twofold shock: labor and consumption. Oh no, you can't do that. It's a recipe for disaster. And then let's play it out. Let's say they're successful and they deport 2-3 million people. What does it bring? What does it bring?
Right.
Doesn't bring you more security.
No.
It makes you more insecure.
Right. And I have to admit, and for those of you that saw some of my posts on Facebook, and because I believe my initial post was, last night this nation was forced to take a long, deep, painful look into its own mirror. Good morning, America. And my next post was, when hate wins, everybody loses. And I've got a lot of varying comments off of those posts. And if you've noticed, I've taken myself off of Facebook right now. I've kind of taken a break from social media. I took CNN, MSNBC off of my presets on my radio in my car, and I just don't want to see the pain and the hurt that is about to be inflicted, not just on those that didn't vote for him, the immigrants and those folks that are going to have to live every day for the next 4 years in fear that they're going to be deported, but also for the people that voted for him, because you don't realize just the damage that's about to be done. But you asked for it, so you're going to get it. But I actually shed tears on the morning of the 6th, because I had to wake up to the reality of the country that I live in, and it's been a real hard, big pill to swallow, and it's still stuck in my throat, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I didn't reach a level of emotion that you did, Paul, but I was very reflective on the 6th, and my post was that this is my father's America, and it's not the one that I envisioned for my daughter. And what really struck me about Donald Trump is that Donald Trump is an American failure who entered the political process and was immediately elevated to the highest level.
Right.
And I remember that my dad worked at the VA hospital off of East Boulevard, and he ran the chemistry department when there was a vacancy, and he ran it for several months and did a good job. Oh, Sherman, you're doing a good job. But when it came time to fill the position, he was overlooked, and they gave it to some young white guy. And he was good enough to manage it,
to maybe even train the person that got the job.
Oh, probably. And I can remember my mom talking to my dad and just telling him to hold on, because my dad was upset that he had been overlooked. And I look at the situation where how someone like Donald Trump, Donald Trump with his convictions, with everything associated with him, can get to the highest level, that people will trust him with the highest level of power and influence and all those things, and discount what Kamala Harris brought. Now, she was not a perfect candidate, but that doesn't matter.
No,
it doesn't matter. The fact is that she was more qualified than Donald Trump will ever hope to be, but still. Not enough. And it just reminded me of my dad. I mean, it's just like, I mean, his hurt was deep when he got overlooked and passed over to make the running of the chemistry department permanent at the VA hospital. And I'm saying, damn, this feels eerily the same. Is that no matter what you do, you know, you could be extremely qualified and still not get the job.
Right.
And that for me was the saddest part about it. And it's for America not to embrace the opportunity to entrust the leadership to a qualified female candidate, qualified Black woman, to me is a continuation or deterioration of the trust that we as Black people are always told to trust the system, work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you do all these things and things will work out. No, it doesn't. It doesn't always.
And that was probably one of the things that led to the pain and the hurt that I was feeling. I was actually really, really angry, but I was more hurt than I was angry. And I guess it was Malcolm X that said, what do you call a Black man with a PhD? And the answer is nigger.
Right.
Because as much as you hope that people would view us in a positive light and hope that people would say, he's qualified, she's qualified, this person isn't as qualified, we're still living in a society that's not ready yet to accept us, you know, from that whole Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech, where, you know, people will be judged not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character.
Right.
We're not there. And I feel like I've been dreaming all this time, and I had to wake up to the reality of the world that I actually am living in. And I almost felt like an illegal immigrant. You know, I felt like, even though I don't think it's going to impact me directly, my pain and my hurt were for those that it will. And again, folks, I know you're out there. I know that you have some pretty passionate feelings about this election. Our number is 216-584-5400. Obviously, you know who I voted for. It was not Donald Trump. But I will say this again. We've got 4 years now, and I haven't seen some of the nominations, but I did hear that he's going to try to put Marco Rubio in the position of Secretary of State. This is a guy that they were going at it against one another, and it's like, as long as you kneel down to the feet of Donald Trump, he will bring you back into the fold.
Yeah, and he'll continue his Jesus-like powers.
Yes.
He'll resurrect you from the dead.
Yeah. I knew once he got shot at, even though, let me just keep it real, that didn't add up for me. Something did not add up. This man was supposedly shot with
a high-powered
assault rifle, whether it be a AK-47, whatever it was, and it grazed his ear to the point that blood was splattered all over his face, right? And he went down and came up with blood over his face, and his Secret Service agents that are charged with protecting his life allowed him, because he said, wait a minute, allowed him to stand up and say, fight. Yeah.
Seemed a little scripted.
It seemed extremely scripted. And I think that the fact that they refused to let the medical personnel release the reports on the shooting, and at first the director of the FBI said, we don't know whether it was shrapnel or what caused the actual, and the next day he was forced to say, yeah, it was probably a bullet. It seemed all very staged, and I think the reason that the news media didn't focus a little bit more attention on is because 2 people lost their lives over it.
Yeah,
And I think that's it, because it was just too sensitive of a subject that people actually did die as a result of it. But I do believe that once a criminal, always a criminal. And I don't think he's going to be able to change his ways. And I think something's going to happen that's going to, during the course of these 4 years, be so compelling and so horrible and corrupt that this country's going to have to force, they're going to be forced to look at him.
See, I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree because he's already greasing not the palms, but he's already clearing the runway for his plane to taxi down the runway.
Well, he's immune.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So
He's got immunity, but the immunity is only as good as because he can still be impeached. Right.
But that's not. No, it's not. It can't. He won't be impeached because he's got
but it depends on exactly what happens.
No.
I mean, you remember he said years and years ago, before I think he even won the election in 2016, the only true thing that Donald Trump has ever said was that he can take a gun and shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and he won't lose a vote.
Right. And that
has proven to be the most truthful thing that Donald Trump has ever said.
But it was also planting the seed.
It was.
Just planting the seed.
It worked.
But it worked extremely, extremely well. And one of the things that I go back to Donald Trump being the ultimate con man is, if we haven't seen his taxes, we haven't seen his health reports. How do back in 2012, he said, "Oh, I'm being audited." I'm sure, Mr. 2006, 2012.
2014, 15, he was saying, once I'm done with my audit, I'll release. He never did.
Never did. And so what he has done is he's continued the con because it's now, I don't even think Kamala Harris and her husband released their financial. Did they release their financial reports?
I do believe they did. I believe they did.
But nobody in the media made us think about this Trump. But come on, this audit, and the IRS said we're not auditing him anymore. So the audit is over.
And what else you don't hear since this election has happened is that the election was rigged. You don't hear anything about...
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
You don't hear that there were any irregularities. It was a perfect election.
Yeah.
Not one Republican is saying, I don't know, something in Virginia went wrong, something in this state or that state. They're like, it was a perfect election.
Of course.
Which speaks volumes to exactly what this whole political game is about, especially on the part of the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I think we're talking about the next 4 years. I don't think that Trump, I don't think he's going to make it. I think because of his health, I think he's either going to die in office or he's going to reach an unacceptable level of cognitive inability to carry out his duties as the president. I think he's going to be removed.
Yeah.
That's going to be a constitutional struggle. But I think he's clearly declining.
The 25th Amendment.
Yeah, the 25th Amendment. But this is the other part that's scary is that Vance is in the wings.
Yeah, that's even more scary because he's a more articulate crook.
Yeah,
liar.
But I mean, just the fact that is the person that people woke up last Tuesday and say, yeah, Trump, I'm good with that. I'm good with his criminality. I'm good with his sexual predation, and I'm good with the
Haitians eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio. I mean, there were so many horrible things being said that were overlooked.
But that's a continuation. If you go back to what he said about Senator John McCain, what he said about people in the armed services. I mean, he said some degrading things about so many people that you lose track. But that's the whole game. That's the whole thing. Just overwhelm you with things so that you're like, oh, okay. You become
desensitized and numb to it. And I think that when I watched that Madison Square Garden rally that he held, which I believe it was in 1939, there was a Nazi rally held in the very same building.
Yes.
And when that comedian got on the stage and said that Puerto Rico was a floating garbage can or whatever.
Right.
I was like, well, that's it right there. You know, the Latina or Latino community they're going to look at him and say, well, that's it. It's done. And yet I hear like 61% of Latin folks voted for Donald Trump.
What
It's like
it was I don't know, it doesn't matter, but a lot, because he won Florida easily and he won it with the Latino vote. He won Texas with the Latino vote.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but that's the, you know, my daughter was at your level, Paul. She was in tears when the news finally came down. And what she said is that people forget that Hitler was elected. To be, and so it wasn't like he had to go through this coup in order to take control of Germany. He was elected, and here we have Donald Trump in a very similar position. He's been elected, but all hell is about to break loose. And with no guardrails, with the Supreme Court saying, "Hey, as long as you're president, you can do what you want under the cloak of." I'm the commander in chief. I'm the chief executive officer of this country. Blah blah blah. And we're not ready. And what for me, what I'm most afraid of is the long lasting impact of his court appointments.
Yeah.
Or his, because what it turns out is that I had said Donald Trump was the worst president in U.S. history, but he's also one of the most consequential.
Oh, I'll give him that.
Presidents.
Without a doubt.
But now he's back for a second time. He will be
the most
consequential president in U.S. history.
Without a doubt.
Because he knows, he learned from the first administration, like, okay, I made some missteps, I did it. Now he knows he knows the system.
He removed the guardrails too.
Yeah.
I mean, when he was in power before, there were mature adults in the room, and now there's only going to be sycophants that are going to be whatever he says goes, and that's the scary part of this. There's not going to be anybody to say, you know, we can't do that. Everybody that he's putting in office is going to be yes men or women.
Okay, so what I heard the other day to that very point is that he's already asking the leader of the Senate, the new Republican leader of the Senate, to say, when I get into office, I want to bypass the confirmation process for my cabinet.
Right.
I'm like, how do you just change history? How do you, tradition? How do you do that and just say, and guess what? I think he has a good shot at doing that. Who's going to challenge him?
Exactly.
Who's going to challenge him and say, Mr. Trump, you can't do that. President Trump, you can't do that. No, because you go against the king and then you miss, you're done. You're toast. And so nobody, because what's the scary part is that not only is his abuse of power and the fact that he has power in an almost absolute sense, but that he's also like a God, like the God of the Bible. He's also have a lot of vengeance in his heart.
Yeah.
And he's coming for blood. I mean, it's just like there's no.
Donald Trump is like Charles Manson, and all of these MAGA cult members are like the family. You know, so he doesn't have to do any killing. All he has to do is order it.
Yeah.
You know, and there they go.
That's what happened January 6th.
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't do anything. I just gave a speech.
Right.
I didn't go inside the Capitol. I wasn't even there. So that's the scary part of this. So when I rewound the tape and I said, everyone had to know that this man should not be put back in office. But there were people, to go back to my other point, that prayed long and hard for him to be reelected for whatever reason. And I want to know what folks' reasoning was for voting for or against Donald Trump. And again, I'm going to go back to the phone number because I know that there are some that are considering calling in, some that want to call in, but they're a little apprehensive about it. But the phone number again is 216-584-5400. Now, I noticed that Our shows typically get quite a bit of viewership on KZ Radio TV, and we want to keep this thing going. We were trying to have a program with actually someone in my family, and hopefully down the road we'll be able to do that. But we want to talk about the prayer aspect of it and the power of prayer, and were your prayers answered, and is prayer even real? I pulled something up regarding prayer. If I can find it, it says prayer can have many benefits, but there is no empirical evidence that prayer as a way to ask for something for a divine source works. It has psychological benefits, it's self soothing, it's mental motivation, there's a sense of purpose, there's a non specific support. Group prayer settings can provide non specific psychosocial support that can reduce anxiety, depression, and pain. In other words, it's more of a placebo than a cause and effect. And so, for those of you that felt like your prayers were answered, did you really feel like it was God that put Donald Trump back into the office, or was there a master plan behind? What was God's rationale behind putting Donald Trump back in office? And because I tell you what, I wasn't praying, but I was hoping real hard that he didn't get reelected. And maybe that was one of the reasons why I kind of teared up, because I couldn't pray. I used to fall back on prayer, and I didn't have that anymore. So all I had was tears and anger. But I didn't blame God. That was the other thing, because had I prayed long and hard on November 5th and woke up in the morning to Donald Trump being president, I would have felt like Jesus saying, Father, why have thou forsaken me? And unfortunately, like I say, it was just me having to deal with the inner anger and sadness associated with the fact that he was reelected. And then there's people in my family, people really close to me that it affected me, and I'm still processing that, and recognizing that everyone has their reason for selecting Donald Trump, and I try in my best way of reconciling things to understand people's rationale, but my anger and my sadness and my fear for the future has still been kind of overrun. Like I said, it's still a bitter pill, and it's stuck in my throat.
Well, let's talk about the aspect of prayer, because what is a deity to do when you've got half of one country praying for one thing and half of a country praying for another thing?
Exactly.
What is a deity to do?
Right.
I mean, it's really a tough place to be.
Yeah.
It's not easy being God, I guess. But I think for me that there are a lot of people who fervently believe that their prayer was answered by God delivering Trump back in office. I mean, there's been that underlying support from evangelicals and others that have said that it is this is God's will, that Trump is a man of God, Trump is this, Trump is that. But there are a lot of people who fervently believe that this was an answered prayer, and to me so what about the other 75 million people, or 74, whatever the number is, whatever it is, that their prayer wasn't it. All right, so we have a caller.
All right, Tom. Okay, caller, go ahead. Go ahead, caller.
Go ahead, caller.
We yeah, just Yeah, let's try it again. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna put you on the other speaker. Hold on. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
We're experiencing a few technical difficulties, but I guess we have a caller that is going to join us momentarily, so we'll give them
Give me 1 second.
give our producer a few minutes to try to get some of the bugs out of the system and get this guy or female on the line. Did we get a disconnect?
No, he's there. I just don't know why he's not coming through the thing to do here. Let me start him up. Okay, try now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
How you doing? My name is Prophet Tim. I was just watching your broadcast and I was listening to what you guys was talking about as far as, the presidency or the president in particular. And I believe as the church that, like, first of all, we should be ahead of the shift, but we should be aware of the shift that's happening in the natural or in the world. And so I believe by us not being ahead of the world in the spirit, that it catches us off grip, in the natural, which causes us to have these conversations that we shouldn't really be having. Where I believe our direction, our conversation as a body should be towards up and or either try to pray for the president, pray for the common president, because even now we did a lot of praying for the current presidency, and look where we at now. I believe I didn't vote for Trump, and I didn't vote for Kamala. I voted for who God told me to vote for. But the thing is, I believe that we was going in the wrong
So you kind of gave your
direction
vote away.
with this current administration, and everything contrary to God is what they was pushing. And even though Trump is not the most nicest person in the world, his views, but we can't compare that to our weaknesses in America when we're dealing with a world event where we have men of power and men that are not afraid to take over, America. So because he said, I'm gonna shoot you on the Fifth Street, and I'm gonna, I can still get votes. That is not our direction as the church conversation. I believe that our conversation should be more so, where is our man of God for this time that God called to bring together the church so that we come together as one and defeat and use our power that God has blessed us with.
So, sir, are you saying that Trump being in power was God's will?
I'm saying that Trump it's I don't like using it, but it's the best one I could use. It's just like with Saul, King Saul. Like you have choices out there in the field. God got a man, but we refuse to be patient, or we refuse to listen to the prophet and accept that man of God because he looked rugged and ragged. But therefore, the people chose, Saul. Therefore, now people choose, Trump. And so that don't mean God ain't got a man out there that's ready and prepared. But as the church is so distracted, then right now we're dealing with what we're dealing with. But we're as I see it, we're following the world. We're not leading.
So and I appreciate you calling, but did you know that people chose Hitler?
People chose who? I'm sorry.
Hitler. Hitler was elected.
Hitler. Oh yeah. I mean Hitler. That doesn't have anything to do with America or Trump.
Well, it does because he was elected. You say because the people chose Trump. Does that mean that it was divine? Because Hitler was elected and ended up being the author of or the mastermind behind the Holocaust. Was God involved with that?
I mean, that's totally wrong, but you're trying to make people and myself get into a mindset that doesn't really fit. Like, we're in America where Trump can't do that. Even if he says, and I pray to God he doesn't, but even if he says, go ahead and get the, execute them or whatever, if they're in prison and they came to a place where down death row, then go execute them. But the thing about it, that's all his leverage is. He can't go out there and say, military, you put them in line and shoot everybody.
Okay, so he couldn't tell people on January 6th to start an insurrection because, that wouldn't happen, right?
Well, even when it's insurrection January 6th, like, as black people, at the end of the day, maybe older people at my age or so and higher, we got a little bit more appreciation for the Capitol. But at the end of the day, black people, black men, black women don't have a full, heart and commitment to the Capitol like that. We're more so drama or more news driven. And so if the news is directing towards, either where it's going to benefit us or we don't have no idea, we follow it, or the news is just like we can't handle it, or we just make up stuff. But at the end of the day, I've been in the military. I've been to the White House. I've been to the Capitol as far as visiting. But at the end of the day, you don't see a lot of our people taking the time to get into the government system and doing what they need to do to take the power from the so-called white man.
Sir,
our church. I'm sorry.
Sir, no, I was going to say we appreciate your call, and I think the direction that your head is that you're saying that this is the divine.
It's a church thing.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, it's a church, it's a spiritual thing.
Spiritual thing, yeah. So and we appreciate that perspective. But we're just going to push back a little bit. And we're going to we only have 10 minutes left, so we're going to move on. But we really thank you for calling and sharing your perspective on that.
Yeah, really appreciate you calling in and call back. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We'll see you next week. All right.
Bye-bye.
But thank you, sir. But that's with only 10 minutes left. That makes me think about two things. One is our next show, and I want to talk about that for a few minutes, and then we can
wind it down.
Yeah, we can wind it down. But our next show that we're working on. The title of the show is "The Struggle is Real," and the question that we ask, we're asking people is, what happens to faith when it is interrupted by tragedy? We want people to talk honestly about their struggles with their faith when it's been interrupted by tragedy. This is not to be sensationalized. We're talking about real, everyday, gut-wrenching struggles with your faith as you've experienced it in light of a tragic event in your life. We hope that people will be willing to share. And again, this is not to be sensationalized. It's more to give a platform, because if we don't acknowledge the struggle, then everyone's going to assume that everything's hunky-dory and do-de-do-de-do, everything is cool, and sometimes it's not, because unfortunately, the randomness of life is the manner of time of death and the amount of tragedy and violence that you're exposed to. It's all, in my humble opinion, it's random, but it does happen. And how do you deal with that? How does that impact your faith? So think about that over the next 7 days, and please join us for that next show. But I wanted to get that out there, that the next show is really something that I hope people take advantage of and talk about honestly. Because if we can at least talk about the struggles with faith, then I think we will have made some progress. So, Paul, what are your closing thoughts?
So I really appreciate the caller for giving his perspective. And it's really what the show is about. You know, this isn't about only singing in the same choir, because Phil and I are kind of on the same page. So we really want to get alternative opinions of Christianity, Buddhism,
Islam,
Judaism. We want different perspectives moving forward, and that's why we wanted to have this platform for open dialogue moving forward. And this for me was therapeutic because, like I said, I have had some real struggles accepting the fact that Donald Trump was reelected, and the reelection was one of the things that I said, if nothing else shows you that there could not be a singular heavenly God in the sky looking down for the best interests of people here on earth, then the reelection of Donald Trump certainly did for me. And so if you have different opinions, I'd love to hear it. I want to thank everyone for watching the show. Like Phil said, we're going to continue to have this dialogue moving forward, and it may be different subject matters as we move forward, but I do feel like this helped me to kind of process what happened over the course of the last week, and want to thank you for being a part of that.
Yeah, and my final thoughts are similar to Paul's. I thank you for watching. I thank the caller for calling in, and we hope that increases over time. But more importantly, I hope that you, the viewer, the listener, understand that it's important for you to inject yourself into the discussion. It really helps us to as Paul mentioned, process things. No one has all the answers. Certainly, I know I don't. I do have my own thoughts, but I'm not claiming to have all the answers. And we're trying to create a platform where we have honest and open exchange of ideas, thoughts, and discussion. And that kind of debate is healthy, and particularly because the impact of God and religion, particularly among Black folks, is pretty intense. And so for those of us who have stepped outside of the shadow of the church and of faith, it's important for us to let people know that we do have our own thoughts, but we're not so monolithic that we're not open to hearing how you process things and how you think about things. And that's the kind of debate that we're just trying to encourage. So it's November the 12th, 1 week after Donald Jesus Trump was elected for a second term. And we'll find out exactly what happens I think it's going to be very interesting.
I'm trying my best not to watch. I'm hearing, without even trying to hear, some of the craziness that's already happened, like with the czar that's going to be taking over the immigration program and things like that. But I want to take a moment to thank our producer, Pastor Larry, for doing such a great job and keeping us on the air and doing his thing. And again, we want to thank all of our viewers. We have noticed that there are some of you that are watching the show, and believe me, as we move forward, we hope that can grow. And
we were at 1,300 views when I checked. That was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So maybe we were up.
One of your most popular shows there, Larry. I don't know if you noticed that, but yeah.
So with that, we'll wrap it up. We thank you and we wish you all the best. And even though it seems a little bleak right now, we'll get through it, and we'll move forward.
And happy day after Veterans Day for all you veterans, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.